The recording is on, so if you do not wish to join a recording session, then you're more than welcome to ring off. We see colleagues and friends still coming in as we started and kicked off. So listen, it's a great moment to do our webinar. I'd like to remind Claire, thanks for introducing it, but it's an hour. We got 20 minutes from the first session and 20 minutes from the second session. Really amazing speakers, so really looking forward to it. So I'll keep myself short. I do want to highlight a few things. First of all, that we as EOPSA will be at Europort together with our fellow members, Shorelink, Schneider and ProConnect. So this will be the 7th to 10th of November. We are media partners of the Port City Association, which is AIVP, and we will be there at their event in Venice on the 16th to 18th of November. Please put those in the calendar. We got some members who will be speaking. Exciting news tomorrow morning. We're announcing the partnership with the Maritime Battery Forum. This is about, of course, electrification and storage, a big topic in the topic of microgrids. And then we're delighted that we're renewing our partnership with PTR, our industry and intelligence partner, allowing us to get data and share that widely with our audience. So, look, we're very proud to introduce three amazing speakers. I've grown to know them over the preparation of this speech, and I can truly say they're eminent industry leaders. So it'd be interesting. So we're going to start with our friends from DFDS, Dieter Bruin and Raf de Wit. They're going to take us through the strategy from DFDS and talk about decarbonisation. Look, we've got Dieter, who, as head of terminals, has got an eminent career in the industry. I think what I wanted to highlight most is her role with Port Exchange in Rotterdam, which helped innovation and for the industry to progress. She's had some executive roles, and today she's running terminals at DFDS and clearly is building a strategy for decarbonisation. May I remind everybody to go on mute, please? We've got quite a few people joining us, so please go on mute. And of course, the second speaker will be Raf de Wit, who runs the DFDS terminal in Ghent. Again, Raf has got quite a distinguished career as a terminal leader. He's worked on really complex multimodal topics, started his career at Volvo, and then progressed throughout the years, and today runs Ghent. He's got a rather interesting expression, bar na bar, I've learned it, 2 bachelors, one after the other, one in electrical mechanics and the other one in vehicle technics. Look, I really feel proud and honored to have you both present DFDS strategy and the outlook for the terminal. Dieter, I would say after your speech, both, I will introduce Minas, but please take it away.
Thank you, Roland. Okay, let me share my screen. All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us today. It's really a big honor and a great opportunity for us to talk to all of you about the work we're doing at DFDS in our terminal organization. I must say that we are not stating that we know how this is done. We are on a journey here, and also we've only just started our journey when it comes to terminals. So the terminals organization in DFDS is very new. I started in my role 5 months ago, and it's a new position. So we are really organizing the terminals now, creating a joint strategy, and a very large part of that strategy is decarbonisation. And it's part of building the terminal of tomorrow, the work that we're going to be doing over the coming years. So again, a great opportunity to speak to you all, and also to kick off some collaboration when it comes to doing this work, because I think as an industry we have to make a change here. So about DFDS, we are, of course, a transportation company. We mainly focus on ferry routes in Europe, and the majority of our revenue is coming from freight movements, even though we also move passengers, of course, and that's what people know us for very well. We have a extensive terminal network, which I will talk about a little bit more later on. And then, yeah, when you look at just in general the impact the shipping industry has on CO2 emissions, it's of course very big. I think we all know these comparisons to the emission of Germany on a yearly basis, etc. But also DFDS is contributing to that, of course. So we feel it is our duty, our obligation as a 150 years old shipping company to also make a change in that and to reduce our emissions and to make shipping more sustainable in the future. And we have set some very ambitious goals when it comes to that, and we're making those changes across the entire organization. So we have the DFDS logistics, and then we have the ferry organization. And in logistics, we do a lot of work on electric trucks, etc. But in the ferry organization, we are doing the work on our ships as well as the terminals. But we definitely have set the standard very high for ourselves to take up that role and to be a part of the decarbonization movement in shipping. So this is our network, as I said, mainly focused around Europe, Northern Europe, very large presence, and Southern Europe. We have quite a footprint. We have, this is not the most recent number, but around 11,300 employees, and we're growing quite rapidly, yeah, in a natural way, but also by mergers and acquisitions. So a pretty steep growth curve. We have 8 terminals that we own, but if you look at this map also, you see that we do business in a lot more terminals. So we touch upon approximately 40 different terminals in the DFDS network that we do business with and that we have some level of influence on as well. And then, of course, from the logistics side, we have a lot of warehouses as well. And then on some of the terminals, we do warehousing activities as well. Yeah, and then if you combine that picture with electrification, which is one of the core activities we undertake to decarbonize, then you see that it hits us in various parts of the business, right? Both in logistics as well as in ferries. So electric vehicle charging pilots, Volvo e-trucks we are deploying, production of renewable energy, which Raf will also talk a little bit more to in the second part of this presentation. LED lights we are installing on terminals, the deployment of electric forklifts, also heavy duty forklifts, and where possible, truckmasters, reach stackers. The various shore power projects to also reduce NO2 emissions in imports. Hydrogen trucking pilots, and then also the sourcing of renewable energy. So we have a lot of different initiatives when it comes to electrifying our business. And also we are working together very closely with port authorities, suppliers, yeah, the industry in general, to look at what is available and how we can tap into that the best possible way. I would also like to stress that DFDS is a company, and our goal, of course, is to be competitive. So we are doing this on a very pragmatic way, where we look at the business case, and therefore we also highly depend on prices, subsidies, technology that fits our operation in order to be able to deploy these initiatives that you see on this map. So we can't just throw money at everything and electrify the whole business. It has to make sense from a business point of view as well. And then, of course, electrification only makes sense if there is availability of renewable energy. So that's also something that we look at when we take the decisions on where we focus our efforts. is green energy available? And if not, then it's very likely that we will park the project or initiatives until it becomes available. And yeah, you can see here that our electricity need is very large also. So also we see that there are quite some steps to take in some locations to make that green energy available for us, so we can take the necessary steps to then decarbonize. So these are the top 8 terminals in our network that we have most influence on, that we actually own and operate, and where we run our own services, a portfolio of services. So vessel and cargo handling, warehousing, cross-docking, and workshop services in general. And yeah, this is also the terminals where we look to focus our efforts when it comes to electrification and decarbonization. But if any other opportunities in other terminals come up, we most definitely jump on those as well. But this is the network where we focus on most. And then looking at the decarbonization journey of DFDS for the terminals, and this is still, as I explained in my introduction, very high level because we're just starting this work, but this is in line with the DFDS company strategy, decarbonization strategy, and kind of the timeline and the initiatives that we expect to be following when it comes to electrification of the terminal. So on the short term, we are reducing our emissions through the adoption of HVO. You see at some terminals we're already fully running on HVO. And then where possible, we are replacing conventional machines with electric machines, Tuckmasters that we use for shunting goods in the yard from one place to the other. And also we already have shore power in a couple of locations. And then at another level, we are working on data transparency. So just mapping out how we are doing in terms of emissions on our terminals, and setting targets then for emissions at various locations. And then on the medium term, we expect to take the next step and to further reduce our emissions by starting tests with 4x4 Tuckmasters, which is a challenge because Tuckmasters are very small machines relatively, and the batteries needed in order to load and discharge vessels are actually too big in size, so they can't fit on the machines. And therefore, those machines do not exist yet. So there's still a little bit of technical development to happen before we can fully run our Tuckmaster operation on electric machines, unfortunately, because that's something we would really like to do. Also, we will be further increasing our shore power locations, and we'll be testing with autonomous driving Tuckmasters. And then to support that, we will be ramping up our own energy production, solar energy, wind energy, as well as providing charging facilities for e-trucks at strategic locations. Yeah, and then on the longer term, of course, towards 2030, we'll be looking at phasing out carbon-intense assets, as well as just in general reduce our energy use by improving efficiency on our terminals, and also really fine-tuning these targets based on science and making sure that we get it right. So this is in high level the journey that we envision for our terminals. And then, some important considerations when we go on this journey is, first of all, the technical issue. So you see that especially the battery part of the electric machines still need to be developed quite a bit, and progress is being made, but different suppliers such as Kalmar and Teberg and Kone are looking at each other also, and it's a little bit of a race. But yeah, there's still some steps to be taken when it comes to making sure that these machines are fit for the ro-ro operation. When you compare a ro-ro terminal to a container terminal, you see a very big difference, because for container terminals, a lot more technology is available already, but in ro-ro it's just lagging behind. And yeah, there's still some developments to be done, as well as when we have the machines that can do the operation. Yeah, make sure that you develop the right skills in the terminals to then do the maintenance and repair, because a mechanic engineer, yeah, it's not the skill set you need for replacing batteries and maintaining these machines. Then there is the availability of subsidies, which we know subsidies are available, but it's sensitive to politics and terms and conditions and windows of opportunity that you have to jump in. So yeah, also there we do feel that the approach could be better. And also when you compare subsidies for terminals to, for example, subsidies you would get as a consumer to get solar panels on your roof, yeah, it feels wrong. It feels that it's a little bit out of sync. And yeah, going back to the start of my presentation, we can make an impact with shipping and with terminals. So it would just be good if more focus would be on that part as well. And then, of course, the availability of green electricity. It doesn't help if we electrify our entire operation and we run on gray electricity. It has to be green. And then the capacity and stability of electric grid in many countries is inadequate, especially if you look at the size of our operation. You want to start doing shore power, you want to run maybe 20, 30 tugmasters, reach stackers, and if you then start charging, the grid just can't take it. So it's really important that port authorities work together with electricity companies to make sure that we get the right grids in place to run these operations fully electric. And then also there is the challenge to be overcome around charging machines. So if we charge, let's say, 26 tugmasters at the same time, yeah, do we then need to double our fleet of tugmasters, or can we charge in between operations? Because ro-ro operations is in general super fast. You have a ship in, you load, discharge, ship out, next ship. So it's you don't have much time to actually load batteries of your machines. And then, as I said, this issue around battery technology, that we can make them fit 4x4 terminal tractors, that we need to load and discharge ships. So then I would like to hand over to Raf de Wit. He is the terminal director for Ghent, as Roland just presented. And yeah, Ghent is our lighthouse and also testbed when it comes to electrification of terminals. So yeah, I would like to hand over to you, Raf. And I don't know if you're talking already, but then you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I can't see you.
Thank you, Dita. If you can keep presenting, that's okay for me. And I just want to add that we already implemented something by making the turnaround times in the ports shorter. That means that our ships has more time to sail, which is fuel consuming, and that way also decarbonizing. But for the terminal in Ghent, we are on a good way. We are, as you can see, we are renewable energy for with a windmill. We are warehouses, electrification, reach stackers, and forklifts already. Tugmasters coming soon. We have a shore power project, which we hopefully can roll out next year, by the end of the next year. We have an electrical barge coming into our terminal, electrical equipment like cranes coming up. And we also have the electrical reefers and trailers, which we can connect to the grid. In the next slide, Dita, I made up a ramp up of what we all have as equipment. and you can see it's quite a lot. We're multimodal terminal. We have an RMG over the rails and handling containers, which is already electrified. And then we have counterbalance machines like reach stackers, forklifts, and then we have all other equipment like roll tractors and cranes, minibuses and yard vehicles. We have a yearly consumption today for 750,000 liters of fuel. We want to electrify everything as soon as possible. My green wish is to have it done by end of 25. If technology will follow, the challenge is 4x4 Tugmasters, and that could save us 2,400 tons CO2 a year. Also, I want to dig in a little bit in shore power. What does it mean for Ghent? It's the next slide. The shore power for Ghent is we have 300 vessels calling our terminal. They are 7 hours alongside. The auxiliary is consuming fuel alongside. The 300 calls adds up to 2,100 auxiliary hours, which is a lot of fuel consumption a year as well, which has an extra decarbonisation of 1,500 ton a year. So next slide. When you see Ghent, why should we go for Ghent? Because we have a lot of things already in place. I mean, the wind turbine is going to be installed. We already secured 5,000 kVA on the grid, which is also installed. We see a lot of energies because we're only working on the vessel something like 6 hours, and then that means that we have 18 hours left. That our equipment can be charged because we only have one vessel a day, 6 hours turnaround time. When the ship is alongside, we can use that amount of power to have shore power. When the ship is gone, we can have the same amount of power used for loading our Tugmasters and our electrical equipment. The total saving in Ghent will be add up to 5,000 tons CO2 a year. So I think that's quite significant. And that's what we're going to go for in Ghent, if we can get the business cases all working up. So thank you from my part and for DFDS for listening in today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll be happy to take any questions at the third part of the webinar.
Well, thanks, Dieter. Thanks, Raf. As life will have it, we have a little bit of a delay, and therefore we need to be a little bit flexible. So we're changing the program slightly. Minas will be with us in a few minutes. He's been delayed, sadly. So if you, Dieter and Raf, are comfortable, maybe you're willing to take some questions now and sort of cover some of the questions that we've got in the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Great. Well, one of the privileges of being president of EOPSA is I can start with the first questions, which I will, and then we will read some questions. My question to you, Dieter, and both to you and Raf, how do your customer react to your strategy? Do they follow suit? Do they accompany you in this process?
Yeah, I will start, and then Raf, you can probably add also from your experience. I think actually the customer is demanding us to do this as well, and yeah, they also want to be able to charge their e-trucks. They also want to have information about emissions. So it's yeah, I do not see any conflicting interests there. Raf?
Yes, I think it's because for Ghent it's a little bit special because our main customers are Volvo Cars and Volvo Trucks, and they are Scandinavian companies who are really interested in the green and environmental. So therefore we get definitely some help. But there is a challenge to get the business right, the business case in black, and that means that there are some challenges, and not all the customers are prepared to pay for it. But we're working on it, and the idea is to get more and more green anyway. also with our customers.
Great, thanks, Claire. There's a couple of questions in the chat. I see one from Kaushik.
Yes, there is one. Just to begin, we have two questions from Ryan and Christophe, who would like to know if the presentation will be available afterwards. So if you confirm, Dita and Raf, the answer is yes.
Yeah, we can share the slides. Yes.
Yes.
And indeed, we have a question from Kaushik. Have you considered BESS, battery storage, to complement your microgrids at your terminals?
From the Ghent side, we don't see really a purpose for it for the moment, because I mean we secured the 5 megawatt already, and I'm quite convinced that the 5 megawatt will be enough to supply all the equipment we need from the grid. So and also we will have a windmill which is producing 6.3 megawatts. So I don't think that it's an option for Ghent, but I think that in the end this could be a solution, huh? Because the batteries, we've been talking with companies, and the batteries they need some kind of second life. I mean, they don't to be in equipment like but it will be okay to use them in battery pack as support for the grid.
Interesting. Can I ask everybody to be on mute, please? We've had a little bit of interaction. I see that Minas Papadakis, CEO of Heraklion Port, has joined us. Hi, Minas. Thank you very much for joining us. Listen, we're launching a couple of questions. Typically, what we do is we have 20 minutes by the first speaker and 20 minutes by the second speaker, and then some questions. But here we had a few questions to Raf and Dita. As you're here, Minas, perhaps I can invite you to then sort of do the second part of the presentations, talk about your experience as Heraklion. Dita and Raf, are you comfortable with staying with us and answering further questions that will come afterwards? Clearly, I wanted to thank you wholeheartedly for enlightening us about your strategy. It's really exciting to see the engagement that you're showing, and don't hesitate to ask questions at the latter part of the webinar. Again, Minas, thank you very much for joining us. Look, delighted to have your view. If you're okay, I want to sort of let everybody know I've got your biography, so I want to introduce you to the audience, and then let you present your strategy with us, and then sort of in about 20 minutes we'll have a combined Q&A for you and for Raf and for Dita. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
that's great. So one thing is among industry leaders, I think Minas Papadakis does not have to be introduced. He's clearly one of our recognized and respected industry leaders in the port business. Minas has a distinguished career. He's after his MBA and his engineering degree, MBA from Imperial College in the UK. He proceeded on several executive roles in the financial industry, and he was as well a teacher at the Financial Management of North College and in the Hellenic Management Association. Minas, you've been CEO of the Heraklion Port during a very troubled time, the COVID time. So I hope it's brought you a lot of experience and expertise in crisis management, but certainly something we'd love to hear about. But I think throughout this period, you've kept true to your strategy, kept a deep focus on decarbonisation and innovation, and I think that's what the audience wishes to discuss with you today. So perhaps I can leave the floor to you and let you take it away.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you, Roland, and thank EOPSA for the invitation, which gives me the opportunity to share some thoughts about the OPS system and present you the case of Heraklion Port. Let me share my presentation. Just give me a few moments. Can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, thank you. So, why OPS? It's simply because we do not want this picture, which is a typical picture in our port and in many ports all over the world. We want our ports to be green, with clear atmospheres, lower noise, and no emissions. The second reason is that OPS will be mandatory from all the ports that belong to the TNT network from the 1st of January of 2030. So it is for legislative reasons. And the third is we feel that it's going to be a competitive advantage for ports, especially for cruise ports, that will increase their chances to be included in the cruise lines itineraries. Now comes the question. One moment. Now comes the question for a port that wants to implement OPS, where to start from. In all projects, we have to start with the design phase, planning and design. Our port, Heraklion port, has just completed the project Electriport, which was about the complete study and design of applying OPS at our port. Electriport was a project financed by 85% by the CEF program, with a total cost marginally exceeding the 1 million euros. According to the characteristics, each port has to define and decide what needs it will cover and how many connecting places it will offer in order to cover the basic needs. Then you have to define the power requirements. In order to do this, you must analyze the electrical system characteristics, the power requirements and fuel consumption in the port of the vessels approaching your port. Especially, cruise ports need substantial amounts of power and energy because cruise ships consume enormous amounts of energy, sometimes exceeding the 10 megawatts for the larger ones. After having estimated the required power and energy requirements, comes the question, where do you find the power? Is the local grid capable of providing it, or you must look for other solutions, i.e. producing the energy in-house by renewables? And the power has to be green power, otherwise the whole project is useless. You are just transferring the point of emissions from your port to the place where the green energy is produced. The pricing of electricity is a big issue, since it must be competitive enough to the cost of marine fuel so as for ships to have the incentive to connect to the local grid. With all the R&D that is taking place in the alternative fuels industry, we do not know whether the OPS technology will become obsolete in a few years' time. The fact is that the uncertainty about future developments in this area dictates that we must follow parallel actions today in order to address the problem of reducing CO2 emissions. The absence of legal framework is another fundamental issue in many European Union countries. There are many questions still to be answered, like who is going to sell the energy to the ships, the port authority or the energy companies? We have the example of Bergen, where they have set up a company where both the local port authority and the energy providers contribute and participate in the scheme. And we have the example of Aarhus, where it is the port authority that is selling the energy. Now I will show you some basic points of our design study concerning Heraklion port. Heraklion port, it is based on the island of Crete. It is a multifunctional port. It belongs to the TNT network, and its basic income comes from the ferry sector and the cruise sector. 1.2 million ferry passengers and 350,000 cruise passengers per annum. This is the general electrical arrangement of the project. Initially, we planned to cover all docks from dock 1 on the west side to dock 6 to the east side of the port. But later on, we decided to skip this maximalistic plan due to technical and financial reasons and go for 5 connecting points at docks 1 and 2 to cover the ferry sector and the dock 4-5 to cover the cruise sector and the cargoes, with the purpose to cover all the basic needs. A central substation will be responsible for the distribution of power at 11 and 6.6 kilovolts and 50 or 60 Hz frequency after converting the national grid from 20 kilovolts and 50 Hz with the help of frequency converters. To achieve the necessary flexibility of the OPS system, the following concept is applied. The medium voltage switchboard that distributes power to the different berthing positions is split into 4 parts that can operate independently, distributing up to 5 MVAs to 4 different positions of the dock at the same time. Every part of the medium voltage switchboard is supplied from a system of voltage transformers and frequency converter, also rated at 5 MVA. In the case where the power requirement for a berthing position is higher than the aforementioned 5 MVA, the parallelization and hopefully not parallelization of 2 or more parts of the medium volt switchboard can distribute to vessels with a higher hoteling load up to 16 MVAs. So we can cover loads up to 16 megawatts simultaneously, and the total energy demand to cover the needs of the ferry and the cruise sector is estimated to 22.5 gigawatt hours per annum. Huge amounts of energy. Now, coming back to the question about the color of the energy, whether it is green enough. You can see here on the map the island of Crete. Since Crete is an island, the cable connection of Crete to the mainland grid is a prerequisite for the success of the project. Hopefully, this project is under construction, and we feel very confident that it will be fully ready by mid-2024, leading Crete to be dependent on thermal plants only by 3% by 2028. On top of that, Heraklion Port is also working on another project to produce electric energy from the wave energy, with a target of producing 2 megawatt power from the waves, using 1/3 of the length of our windward breakwater. Now, CapEx. We have estimated the total investment cost, including unpredictable expenses and VAT of 24%, to around 32 million euros. The biggest amounts refer to the cost of the central substation works and equipment, as well as the cost of the onshore connection equipment and cable management systems. We are planning to apply for financing at the next CEF call, which has already started this autumn, hoping to earn as much a subsidy as 85% of the total investment cost. Now, a quick view at the financial model from the ship owner's point of view. Using data from January 2023, now things have changed a bit. It seems that there is a big deficit for the ship owner, no matter if it is a cruise ship, a cargo ship, or a RoPax vessel. The break-even point that equals the cost of electricity with the cost of bunker fuel for the cruise ships is 0.13 euros per kilowatt hour, whereas the selling price will be estimated to 39 euros, 0.39 euros. Ship owners do not get disappointed because the financial picture is much worse from the port's perspective. But I believe, but when we come to the environmental footprint for a port, before and after the application of the OPS system, the results are really extraordinary. Almost 90% reduction in the CO2 emissions by 2028. These are really, really impressive results. Now, coming to the end, I want to close with a positive message that we can deliver better and greener ports, better and cleaner environment, better and cleaner planet to the next generations. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm ready to answer questions.
Thank you, Minas, for this very positive close. It's almost sounds like Barack Obama. Yes, we can.
Yes,
So,
I fully believe that we can.
And
we're fully dedicated to this mission.
And we've seen that, and we appreciate that. And of course, when you see these levels of CO2, these percentages, they look very. That to me, in relation to the title of this webinar, is the price and the prize of achieving this sort of decarbonization. Is that you've got a big number basically. Can I start with the first questions, and then we'll turn to Claire for the questions that are online. And again, I'd like to remind everybody, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and raise the questions as we go. Minas, can I start with the first question? How you're developing at the moment Hupines, which is the wave energy, but
Exactly.
how are you following the growth of offshore? And I think around Greece, it's more likely to be floating wind as a potential way of generating electricity, green energy for the island.
From the wind, you mean?
Yes.
Island.
Are you following the development of floating wind around the island?
Yes,
and do you see that as serious?
We are following, but there are still some legislative issues, and I'm afraid that the local community is not ready to accept it for the time being. So probably the next 2 to 3 years, we will see some developments on this issue. But I'm also looking to set up some photovoltaics in the port. We don't have too much space, but we will do something probably to produce around 1 megawatt or a bit more from the photovoltaics, from the sun.
Claire.
The first question is from George, and it's for Dita and Raf. Are you planning to invest in charger as a terminal, either OPS or truck charging?
Yes, absolutely. And that's part of the business cases that we make for the terminals to electrify, that we need charging facilities as well.
You mean to charge trucks and vehicles?
As well, trucks and vehicles, as well as terminal tractors, reach stackers, forklifts. Yeah.
It will be in a future stage. Not at this moment, it's only for ships, but in a future stage, yes.
Yeah, and I think Dita
we have
and
to substitute with electric vehicles, which we're planning for the near future.
And Minas, we will share with you the presentation from Dita and Raf, where they talked about how they are fully electrifying their internal and total terminal. That was the first part of the presentation today, and it was very interesting to follow.
I can add there, maybe I can add is that we already have superchargers in place in the terminal, and we just ordered another 2 extra. So and the supercharger, they deliver 800 kilowatts. 400 kilowatts. So they're quite heavy, and they can charge very fast equipment and trucks.
Okay. To follow up with you, Dita and Raf again, is there any tax exemption for kilowatts sold to your fleet?
Not at the moment. This is an issue that the ferry companies have raised to the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, and I think probably, yes, we will do so in the coming months.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know the details of whether we have any tax exemption in any of the countries. That's something I would need to check.
Okay, thank you. I see that Dado is raising his hand.
Hi. Hi, Claire. Thanks.
Hi.
Question to Mr. Papadakis. Thanks for your presentation. I really loved the last slide. Yeah, that gives us at least aligns everybody on the same page. My short question is, in your financial model, did you consider the price of CO2?
No.
For the ship?
No, we have not.
May I ask why?
This will make things better, and this will give an incentive for the ship owners.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kaushik. And we have a question for DFDS from Rachel. Has it been necessary to adapt acquire BTM, so behind the meter, power and energy assets for the different projects? Or has this aspect been accommodated FTM via utility, for example?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat it more slowly?
Perhaps, Rachel, you can help us with the anagram FTM.
Yeah, for sure. Hi. Sorry for being too lazy to type in full. So I think probably a lot of us recognise the complexity of some of these projects, particularly in adapting port assets for power and energy. So I was interested whether you're finding that it can be accommodated in front of the meter, the FTM piece, by the utilities, or whether it's something that the port is having to do locally behind the meter. So separating those activities is something you have having to do yourself to accommodate power and energy systems.
It's a very interesting question, but I can't give an answer to it because every port is different. And also, I think that's an important point to raise here, that sometimes we see that port authorities are taking on the role of energy supplier, and they're new to that, right? That's not their area of expertise. So, and in some situations, we deal with the energy company, but it really varies per country, per port, how investments, infrastructure, energy prices, etc., are governed. So it's a very interesting question because it's impossible to answer, and I think actually not having sort of clear ownership, or this is unprecedented for port authorities. Yeah, but that is also delaying things, because if we, for example, have to make certain investments and pay that to a port authority, and or the port authority will co-invest, but then increase the price of energy as we buy it, yeah, then that it becomes very intransparent and complex.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I agree. Exactly. So it's a complex one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can add from the Ghent side, we're a little bit in a more easy role, because the terminal is owned by DFDS, and the ships coming to the terminal are also DFDS. So everything stays inside. The ship owners and the terminal are one and the same company. So that makes it a little bit more easier for the Ghent terminal. On other terminals, Immingham, for example, they take other vessels in from other shipping companies as well, and then it gets more complex.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Ryan is raising his hand too.
Yes, yeah, I wanted to to go a little bit into the questions that the positions that have been presented about it doesn't make any sense to electrify if you do it on gray electricity, because in my opinion it's true. You wanted to have, in the ideal situation, you want to have green electricity for everything you do electrically, but still I think as part of air quality and sound emissions and all that, which is not CO2, but it's still reducing when you use shore power or when you electrify any equipment. It still makes sense, in my opinion, to electrify, even if it was gray electricity. And probably even the CO2 abatement there's still some CO2 abatement compared to if you burn diesel in an engine versus having electricity coming from a gas thermal plant, which would still be better. So I would say to sort of flip that thing around and just go for electrification anyway, because it has so much more advantages than just CO2.
Yeah, I get your point,
Yeah.
and I partially agree. But then the complexity here is that we are a business, and electrification comes at a cost. And so we need to prioritize and sequence our projects. And then it's preferred to go with green energy rather than places where you have gray energy. And then also you have the alternative of HVO, which is more sustainable than diesel, which we then apply in other locations. So I get your point. And if we would have unlimited resources, we would go for it. But that's not how it is, unfortunately.
Minas, you wanted to add something to this? You're on mute. Can I unmute you, Minas?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, well, I agree that there are also several advantages from the OPS system, not only the reduction in the CO2 emissions, but the cable connection of grid to the mainland grid will be much sooner ready than when we will be ready to offer OPS. So there will be no problem.
Great, thanks, Ryan. I have a quick question to Raf and Dita. One of the topics that we are, as an association, keen to promote is the idea that when you operate on a regular route, is that you basically have connections on both sides of the route. We call it reciprocity. Are you seeing today a certain amount of maturity in this? Are you seeing your calling ports basically saying we want to work with you to deliver it on both sides of your route?
This is another factor that when we prioritize shore power projects, we look at that also partially because of economic reasons. You have to amend a ship as well for shore power, which is quite an investment. And so if we can run the entire route, both ends, with shore power, then of course that is what we go for. A good example is Copenhagen-Oslo. And those are also city terminals, by the way. So then you also have less emissions in the city, which is very beneficial. But definitely that's what we look at. But not to answer your question, Roland, not necessarily what port authorities look at, right? So it doesn't always match.
No, and I think we've heard it again today, is that you have many port authorities, many different governance structures for port authorities, and not all of them have the freedom or availability to build. Minas, can I ask you a quick question about the CEF funding? Do you find the CEF funding to be responsive and very focused on decarbonisation? In other words, is it a simple process to request funding from that structure, from that institution?
Yes, it is very responsive. They are very focused, and they truly believe too much in the OPS system. It is one of their main priorities to subsidize such systems. We are lucky because Greece can apply to the cohesion, so the percent of subsidies is 85% and not 50%, which is the general.
And so you would strongly recommend other ports to use the same
Yes,
avenues of raising the funding. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Let me do.
We are competing with the railways for the from the same pool of funds.
Sure. Thanks, Minas, Dita, and Raf. We're getting to 1 minute to 3. We've been very disciplined in keeping to the timing. I'm doing a quick round table. If there's one last question for either of our speakers, raise your hand. And if not, then I have only one thing to say is a big thank you for your time, big thank you for your availability, Dita, Raf, and Minas, of course, and for enlightening us on your strategy, both from the operational side and from the port side. We call this event the prize, and I think that you've demonstrated that there's definitely a decarbonization prize to be given here to the work that you're trying to do and delivering in your respective businesses. Clearly, we as an association will continue to shout in favor of more funding for this industry and making sure that what we've all agreed to in terms of legislation or even in terms of strategy, corporate strategy, can be delivered with the necessary speed and the necessary support. I wanted to highlight one last point. We've got to remember that other industries are funded correctly, so industries such as the car industry or the offshore wind industry. So it is only our job to make sure that we go back to those pockets of money to be able to get the funding necessary for our projects. There's billions being agreed on the net zero industry agreement between Europe, and I really wish that that would come our way being the ports, the ship owners, the energy companies who deliver this type of solutions. May I once again ask, thank you for your discipline. Thank you for the 20 minutes. Thank you for joining us. And of course, to the members who've joined us as followers, thank you very much for being there in this hour webinar.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you.
Thank you for the Thank you.
Wishing you a great afternoon and a great week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.